did grow up homeless in a broken family. We lived in a car and drove back and forth around the country. So I had a lot of experience seeing the United States as a child. I left home when I was 13 and managed to graduate from high school. And at that point, I decided it was time to settle down and not move around so much, so I joined the Air Force. And because I had heard that they give long tours, and sure enough, they do. So I had a few long tours in the Air Force and then retired in Omaha, Nebraska, where I convinced the mayor of Omaha that he needed me on his team, and they created a job for me. And I became a legislative affairs director and a communications director. So I started to get involved with media coordinating, doing interviews and things like that, writing speeches. And then the mayor came up for re-election and asked me to come and do that work on his re-election campaign. I did that. And then I went to work for the Attorney General when he was running for the Senate. And so I did a few political campaigns while I was out there. Got a little bit burned out on the campaign trail and was, my heartstrings were being tugged at a little bit from the Episcopal Church because I had recently gone back to church. And I decided that I was being called to be a nun. And I called my best friend back east, and he said, I know just the place for you. And so I went out there, and he dropped me off at a very conservative Episcopalian order. We wore the full black habit and the starched veil and wimple and everything, the whole 9 yards. And I lived there for 3 years, and I loved the religious life, but could not quite handle living in a house with 18 other women. So 3 years later, I called my best friend and said, I'm ready to leave now, and he came and got me. And after a period of time when I was trying to kind of find out where to go next, realized suddenly one day that I had fallen in love with him, and fortunately he had fallen in love with me too, so we got married. And he was still on active duty, so he dragged me out here, where he was the commandant of the Personnel Recovery Academy. And 10 minutes down the road was a university where I found out I could be enrolled as a senior and finally get my degree. So I did. I got my bachelor's and stayed there to get my master's. And then I started teaching at that university and a couple of other colleges in town. And finally I have settled into a position as a lecturer in English at Gonzaga University, #1 ranked Gonzaga Bulldogs. And this is the life that I always thought that I should be living. I had kind of forgotten about that for a lot of years because I was distracted by life itself, but when I look back on it now, I remember that as a little girl I always dreamed about being an English professor at some college in the Pacific Northwest. And, well, we're not Pacific, we're inland, but still, it's exactly where I think I was supposed to be all along. I was an administrative superintendent back in the days when it was called 702. I was a 702A, meaning I was an administrative specialist in an office setting, so I didn't have to do the orderly room or personnel stuff. So I got to work in the front office usually for somebody like the chief of staff or the commander or something, and that was pretty cool. The first duty station that I had was at MPC, at the Manpower and Personnel Center at Randolph Air Force Base, Texas. And that was a 4-year tour. Had a blast there. I worked in the computer room, actually. And because part of my job involved taking calls from people around the world who used personnel computers, I actually took a course in as a technical control specialist. I took the correspondence course. So I could have been certified as a tech control specialist too, and so people would call up and say my terminal's down, and I'd troubleshoot it and stuff like that. And there was one episode that I remember. The commander of Air Force Communications Command had come in, and he was a short 4-star general, little guy, and I was in this cramped little corner desk on the computer room floor. And I had a teletype here and a computer here and like a 20-button phone over here. And the system went down, so of course everything starts ringing at once. So I see this general come in, and I stand up, as you do when generals enter the room, and I'm on the phone, and I'm answering this teletype, and I'm typing on this computer here, and I'm troubleshooting and doing all of this stuff. And he keeps kind of moving closer and closer to me. So I'm moving farther and farther away, and suddenly I'm backed into this corner, and I finally get off the phone and everything, and I put it down, and I couldn't help it. I just turned and looked at him like, and he looked up and said, "I'm going to get you into that wall one way or the other." And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. He's a general, and he's like a nice guy. So that was fun. Out to California for a couple of years. I was at the Air Force Satellite Control Facility at Sunnyvale Air Force Station. Back in the day when the space shuttle was still sort of a secret research project. We were still in research and development. As a matter of fact, it was an Air Force Systems Command program at the time. And got to meet the astronauts of the Space Shuttle Challenger. They came out and told us what it was like to be in the capsule, and got to meet Colonel Onizuka. And that was just a few months before their last flight, when, of course, the Challenger incident happened. And I remember watching that on the monitors. That was a really traumatic experience for everybody there, because we were about to take control of the space shuttle from mission control, and then all of a sudden all of our screens went blank, and there was nothing there, and everybody kind of looked at each other like, why are all of our screens blank? And that was when we turned around and looked up on the TV screen and saw what had happened. And I don't think there was anybody on that station who wasn't affected by that, because we met those guys and had tremendous respect for them and for their mission, and so that was a really moving experience. I guess my earliest memory was actually shortly after graduating from tech school, and I was in Biloxi, Mississippi, which was a pretty hostile environment for Air Force folks at the time. The community had apparently tired of the military presence, and so they were not terribly welcoming. So I was feeling a little bit downhearted when I did leave Biloxi, but I went to visit my folks, and in order to get to my folks' place, I had to take a plane out to Raleigh, and then a bus to Rocky Mount, and then I had to take a cab out to the middle of the country to find them. But I got there in the middle of the night, and so I was stranded in the bus terminal until I could get a cab the next morning to go out to my dad's place. And there was a group of old guys sitting around a table in the bus terminal playing cards, and they looked like they just hung out there, like this was their spot. And they were so nice to me, and of course I was in my lovely blue dress uniform, so proud to be coming out of training and ready to join the real Air Force. And these guys bought me donuts and coffee, and they were just so warm and open. And of course, I was a young girl at the time, and I figured they were being chivalrous. I woke up the next morning because I had fallen asleep on the bench, and I woke up and all of their coats had been piled on top of me to keep me warm, and they were still there, and they, got me coffee, and then we started actually talking, which we hadn't done the night before. And it turns out they were all World War II vets. And so it wasn't just the case of, a bunch of old country gentlemen looking out for the lady. They were vets looking out for another vet. And that just has stuck with me, I think, more than anything else that I experienced in my military career. I feel kind of strange to be here because I am not the most active member of our post by any means. I know that a lot of folks contribute where they can and to the extent that they can. We all have individual gifts that we bring to the table. I pay my dues and I show up for as much as I possibly can. A lot of things happen while I'm working, of course, but we have some favorite projects that we do here. Most of my involvement is actually with the American Legion Riders, because that's how I got introduced to the American Legion. So we do have a lot of things going on, of course, during the riding season when the weather is nice. We do a lot of actual rides and a lot of missions with the Patriot Guard. We try to support them whenever we can. But we are very involved in the Honor Flight program, which is a local effort to send as many World War II vets as possible back to DC so they can see the memorials that have been erected in their honor. So we've adopted that as our special program for this year, and we're going to dedicate as much of our effort as possible onto that program. But we also welcome the vets home. We give them the welcome home that they perhaps didn't get the first time around when they come back from DC. So we like to be involved particularly with the older veterans. We have a nursing home here in Spokane that is just an absolutely wonderful place for our veterans, and we spend a lot of time out there visiting with them. And we had a barbecue out there a few weeks ago, and you know, just it was a good time just to visit, just to remind them that we are here and thinking about them. So those are some of our favorite projects. But we also do some community work. Tom's Turkey Drive is one of our community's favorite events. One of our favorite TV personalities here sponsors this turkey drive for the food bank every year. And we get out there and actually pack the bags, the grocery bags full of the fixins for a Thanksgiving dinner. And a couple of us on the crew have a little competition going to see who can pack the most bags the fastest. And of course, I'm undisputed champion there, so I suspect I will retain that title for a while. I came to the American Legion for an opportunity to ride our motorcycles with other vets, actually, because a friend of ours, my husband is also a veteran and a member of the American Legion, and we ran into a friend up at the ski hill that we work at, and I don't know how it came to be, we suddenly discovered that he was a vet as well. And he told us about the American Legion Riders, because he also rides motorcycle, and these things just sort of fell into place. And he said, yeah, you should really come out and meet the guys. So we came out, and within a half an hour of meeting the members of the post here, we, you know, signed up our membership forms, and it's like, yeah, this is home for us. It was just a really wonderful opportunity to continue the kind of camaraderie that we experienced while we were still on active duty. These are people who understand our experiences better than anybody else because they went through them too. I think it's really wonderful to remind people that we served. I think that it's so easy for people to forget those who served. I mean, look at the World War II veterans and the Vietnam veterans who didn't get the welcome homes that they deserved. It's really easy for people to forget what the military is doing out there as individuals. We think of the military as this bureaucratic machine, and sometimes forget the individuals who are the heart of the military. And so this is our opportunity, because we're in the community. We're not stuck on the base, and we're not deployed overseas. So we can sort of maintain that presence in the community to remind folks of everybody who served before and those who are serving now. And I get some interesting responses from my students when I talk about military experience. And I actually wore my leathers to class one day, and they thought that was pretty cool. And I actually found out that several of them were considering careers in the military or had family members in the military. So it was sort of a way to bring us all together into a shared experience. And I just think it's rewarding to be a part of the community and to keep our military members a part of the community, even when they're not here. I tell them that it's a great bunch of guys. And by guys, I mean guys and gals. But these are the old folks. These are the old guys sitting at that card table in the bus terminal from many, many years ago. they have the warmest hearts, and they will do anything that you need them to do. If there is anybody in trouble, they are there. They don't hesitate. They're still serving. And it's really wonderful for somebody like me who still sort of misses being in the military. This is the next best thing to being back on active duty, because we're a bunch of vets hanging out. It's kind of like going to the club after work, you know, and we share our experiences, and it's just a great place to be. It's very heartwarming because some of these folks have suffered much and are still dealing with a lot of challenges themselves, but we get through it all together, and we're like one big, happy, sometimes dysfunctional family, and we love it.